So I'm in a small barrack space of Vindolanda, and this is the home, or would have been the home, for 8 Roman soldiers, their families, possibly their slaves, maybe some pets. Might have had a second story on this building, but even so, a small, dark, smelly, sweaty space, all that armour starting to rust in here, very humid. Well, it'd be warm, but apart from that, potentially not very pleasant. But these, of course, are some of the lowest ranking people at Vindolanda. And the Roman army is a reflection of society as a whole. So the more power, the more influence, the more wealth you have, the more space you had too. And we can see the difference between this sort of room, which is an average sort of room, and every Roman fort across the empire has space like this, to what the next person up the tree or the ladder would have had. We go to the centurion's apartment at the head of this barrack. And already at the top of the road we see the next big room sticking out. This person had much more space. Wow, what a difference. And this isn't for 8 people in here, this is for potentially 1 person, 1 centurion and his rather majestic apartment. And if we think in modern terms, what we've got here is sort of the footprint of 2 18th or 19th century terraced houses rolled into one. So this is a pretty big area that this guy's got here. And of course this is a much more important person than the rank and file soldiers and their families living down there crammed into their barrack rooms. But what did our centurion aspire to? How does this reflect with the big chief, the top man and his family inside a Roman fort? Well, let's go and have a look. I'm standing here beside the Praetorium, the commanding officer's house. This building, a large townhouse built round a courtyard in the middle. It has the same amount of room in here, in all of these rooms combined, as about 150 of his soldiers. So the centurion had the same amount of space, about 30 of his Roman soldiers. The Roman soldiers are crammed into a barrack room. This guy and his family have the equivalent of 150 people's space inside this fort. And that reinforces their social status in comparison to everybody else at Vindolanda almost 2,000 years ago. So the Praetorium is quite a fancy building. It's got everything you need as a person of high society in the Roman world, everything you want, everything you don't want to share with your fellow people living inside the fort. So it's a corridor building built around a courtyard in the middle, 4 wings, each wing of the structure used for specific things. It's got its own bathrooms, it's got its own loos, it's got its own heated bath complex as well. You don't have to go for a bath with everybody else if you're the commanding officer. You've got a private bath all there ready for you. And you've also got private space. That courtyard in the middle with the green grass there is the only private space in the whole of the fort. Now, of course, what do I mean by private? Well, of course, it's yours as the commanding officer for you and your family to enjoy. So you'll be sharing that space with the rest of your household. And that will probably include slaves, servants, freedmen, your children, of course, any pets or animals you might have. Your horse has a stable in the building as well, so you've got private stables, you've got your own dining suites, you've got your own entertainment rooms, you've got your servants' quarters, heated dining rooms, and of course you'd use this building to entertain. You'd have parties in here. The other thing about this space is it has one of the shortest commutes to work in the history of Vindolanda, because literally 2 or 3 meters next door, the headquarters building in the middle of the fort is where you'd pop across to work every morning to do your office accounts and manage the affairs of the fort. So pretty good stuff when you're at the top of the tree in Roman Britain and Roman Vindolanda. So here's some of the private bath suites. This is the one bolted onto the edge of the building. This is an extension to the main structure, so you can look at this and think, well, he probably didn't have enough toilet capacity for his whole household, so you had to slap on an extension to get more bums on seats. In the rooms next door, we've got the ground floor of the private apartments for the commanding officer and his family. This is the posh wing of the building where he and his family would actually live. So the majority of the structure, we prefer other uses, but this is the private guest rooms or the private rooms for the commander. Come past these buttresses which were propping up the wall, and these are really important archaeologically because the angle of the buttresses, taking us 6 or 7 meters up the wall, showed us that we had a second story on this wing of the building. And it's probable that the bedrooms for the commanding officer and his family will be on that second story, and they get a clear view from their windows right across the top of the fort wall into the valley below, and most importantly, none of the soldiers on patrol would be able to look in to their part of the building. Completely and utterly private. Let's step into some of the heated rooms here. Now, this particular room was fantastic when we excavated it. A lot of the wall plaster was still clinging to the side of the wall, and buried just in the corner of this wall here would have been a little arm purse full of coins, which was when the wall came down, it scattered the coins all across the floor of this room. We had 50 or 60 small coins which were scattered across here when we excavated this space. So somebody in this household had stashed a little piggy bank inside the wall itself to keep it safe. And of course, unfortunately for them, they never came back for it. Let's come into the corridor that connects everything, connects this suite of bedrooms and rooms together. We've got here the foundation of a step leading us up to the second story. And across here we've got the remains of a bath suite, a later addition built onto the commanding officer's house, where they've refurbished the bath so they can live in the height of luxury. And at the bottom of this room, in this corridor, we've got the heated dining rooms next to the kitchens over here, and then another heated entertainment room next door, taking us into the central courtyard space. Now, this courtyard separates the commanding officer and his entertainment part of the building and his baths from the servants' quarters, which are behind me. You can see the much smaller rooms there, very reminiscent of the barrack rooms we first looked at. And in there you'd cram the servants and the slaves of this household, the people looking after the family, a family of wealth, power and prestige. But one of the things about a household like this, of course, is very expensive to run. Here we've got a little furnace room and a hole in the wall where the supplies and materials would come on in to constantly feed this furnace. You can see it's darkened the stones, blackened them and burnt them red. It's actually stained the stones from the heat of the fire, pumping hot, smoky air into this hypercore system next door, so that the commanding officer would always have a nice, warm dining room to have his tea in. The average soldier didn't have any of this sort of stuff. They couldn't afford a heated dining room. They couldn't afford the fuel to heat this dining room. But the commanding officer had an enormous amount of wealth compared to everybody else inside this fort, and he spent it on himself, his family, to make this as luxurious as possible while he was serving on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. So what about the commanding officers themselves and their families? Well, very often they come from all different parts of the empire. They're not necessarily from the same region that the rest of the regiment is from, so they'd be very different social backgrounds, of course, but also cultural backgrounds too. They're not one of us, they're one of them, if you see what I mean, from a soldier perspective. They're not very often serious Roman soldiers either, in the sense that they're not professional soldiers. They're not in it for life. They're here for sometimes 4 or 5 years, in which case a building like this, which was up for 200 years or so, modified by each family coming to use this space, could have had 40 or 50 different families living inside here during its lifetime, and each one leaving their mark on the stones and the walls all the way around us. Now, because of this constant change, very often buildings like this, which had a long history, ended up with a character, a life all of their own, and commanders and their families became quite superstitious, and they very often left little votives or altars to the spirits of the buildings that they were going into, hoping that the house itself, the Praetorium, would look after them and their family as much as they would be forced to look after it. And we're very, very lucky at Vindolanda, because in pits, just outside this bathhouse here, inside the courtyard, 3 altars left behind by commanding officers were buried by the next person coming in to erect their own. And because of that, we know a little bit about some of the people who used this space. This guy here is a guy called Petronius Urbicus of the voting tribe of Fabians, and he comes all the way down here from Brexia, which is near modern-day Milan. But he's travelled a long, long way to come to Vindolanda to set up this altar. The fact that he mentions his voting tribe and where he's from also suggests to us that his time at Vindolanda is very much just another step on his political career. This is something that he has to do, and then he's probably going to go home and carry on with political life, civil life, after his stint in the Roman army. And many of the other stones are exactly the same. On the side of this altar, we get a lovely carving here of a stork or a crane carved into the side of the stone very, very beautifully. And that is probably the regimental emblem for the 4th Cohort of Gauls. And of course, a crane in Roman symbolism means watchful, on the lookout. Isn't that great? So the army, the garrison have got a symbol which means we're on the lookout, we're on the watch. And of course, they're on the watch on the wall. Where I'm sitting is part of the refurbishment of a bath suite that was found initially by Anthony Headley in the 1830s, a reverend who bought the site and he was an antiquarian who loved Vindolanda and wanted to excavate the whole site. And he found this space full of ash between these various hypocaust columns. But he missed something. And in 1997, when this whole building was re-excavated by Robin Burley and his team, we came back into this room, back into the space, and we had Headley's plans, what he'd drawn, showing this individual space of each hypocaust column. And on this particular column, he'd left a thin piece of stone sitting on top of another piece of stone, and the next piece of stone down was the tombstone of a centurion killed in a war just when Hadrian came to the throne. So this tombstone says, Debus manibus, to the departed of Titus Annius, who is this centurio of the Tungrians, Tungrorum. And then it says, Tungrorum, he is killed in bello. He's killed in the war. Really important, this bit, because it tells us that he's actually killed in fighting that was raging just as Hadrian came to the throne, and perhaps was the reason why Hadrian's wall was built. You find a lot of things, of course, in a praetorium, a commander's house. He's a very wealthy person. He spent a lot of money on himself and his family, and therefore the order of magnitude of the fanciness or the glory of some of the artifacts can pale other things to insignificance. So we've got a lot of lamps in this case which have come from lots of different places, but the one that really stands out for me is this bronze bull-headed lamp on its stand. That is an order of magnitude much more expensive than most of the other things sitting in this case, and that came from a toilet drain in the commanding officer's house. So you can imagine one dark night somebody nips to the loo with this lit, and for some reason or another they drop it, it lands in the toilet drain. And, of course, they either had enough money not to worry about bending down to pick it up, or not enough courage. But 2,000 years later, we find it when we excavate the building, which is great. So the altars, the artifacts, the buildings, the spaces all come together to give us this incredible picture of people who are long gone from Vindolanda, but their sense, the essence of who they were, still remains on the ground. One of the things we've learned, of course, by looking at those spaces is just how much rank was reinforced by the physical space. Still very much relevant for us today as modern societies. When we think of our own economies and our own cultures, those who have a lot tend to exhibit that wealth and power. And it was the same thing 2,000 years ago.